Hi, boys and girls. Here we are at another Bible story. Last time we learned about Abram. Remember how God chose Abram to be the father of many nations, he said. But Abram didn't have any children. And we learned that he moved from the city he lived in called Ur. And God said, I want you to go to Canaan land. And he went with his father. But then his father died, and he and his nephew and his wife and all their servants continued on. And then they finally had to split up because they had too many animals. So Lot chose to go to a place called Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abram went to another place of land, and God said, this is going to all be your land. It's called Canaan. And little by little, God was going to give it to Abram. But Abram didn't own the land yet. And he was just listening to wherever God would take him. And he would follow God and go from place to place. And he lived in a tent. And he would have all his animals and all his servants. And he and his wife lived in a tent. But they didn't have any children yet. But one day, when Abram was just out by his tent, 3 men came walking up to him, to his tent, to where he was living. And these 3 men were traveling. And in that day, there were no hotels and there were no restaurants and things. So when people were traveling, they would stop at people's homes and have lunch with them or get a drink of water. So Abram saw these visitors that were wandering by, and he stopped and ran out to them and he said, stay here with me and I would be happy to give you some water and some food. And so he got them water for to take a drink and to clean off their feet. And then he went into the tent and he told his wife, Sarai, make a dinner for our guests. Make some soup. And his servants went out and probably butchered a lamb and so he could have meat to feed their guests. Well, while he was visiting with the guests, one of the guests told him, and the Bible says it was actually the Lord. The Lord came in the flesh at this time talking to Abram. Actually, his name wasn't Abraham yet. But he said, Abram, I want you to know that you are going to be the father of many nations. He said, look up at the sky. And at the time it was dark and you could see so many stars. And he said, do you see all those stars? How many stars are there? Can you count them? And Abram said, I can't count them. There's too many. And then he said, I want you to know that you will have that many descendants. You are going to have so many descendants, more than you can even count, and the stars of the sky. And so he said, and I'm going to change your name. You are not Abram anymore, but you're going to be Abraham. And Abraham means father of many nations. So God changed his name because he was going to be the father of many nations. And you know what? He was 99 years old. And he didn't have any children yet. Do you think he said to God, how can I have any children? I don't have any. I'm too old. No, he didn't. He trusted God. He believed what God was saying to him. And he had faith. So he went in and he even told, as he was talking to Abraham, Sarah was listening. She was in the tent listening. And she started laughing. And God heard her laughing. And he said, why are you laughing in there? She said, because I'm old. How am I going to have a baby? I'm 89. I'm too old. But God was going to bless her with a baby. Well, it was very wonderful. These men were visiting with Abraham and changed his name from Abram to Abraham. And God changed Sarai's name to Sarah. And so Sarah just thought it would be so funny to have an old lady have a baby. She'd be like your great-grandmother having a baby. And so she laughed. And she tried to say she didn't laugh. She's like, when God asked her, why did you laugh? She said, I didn't laugh, but she did. And do you know what? Sure enough, God blessed Abraham and Sarah, and they did have a son. And his name was Isaac. And the name Isaac means laughter. Isn't that fun? So sure enough, God blessed them with a son. And God picked Abraham and Sarah to be the father of a great nation because they loved and obeyed God. And they had faith. Even though they were old, they could have said, no way, God, I'm not going to have a baby. I'm too old. No, they trusted God and they believed him. And because of believing him, God blessed them. And God was going to bless them with a great nation, with many nations, lots and lots of people, so many people they can't even count them all. And bless them with this land called Canaan that they were living in. So we can be like Abraham and obey him, and we can trust him and believe his promises. And we should believe him. We can trust God to always keep his promises, just like he kept the promise to Abraham. Because Abraham did have many children. We're going to find out all about Abraham and his descendants all this year. The Bible is full of the stories about Abraham and his family.